Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, bringing you another report to add to my coverage of the Conservative Party of British Columbia's annual general meeting for 2025. Now, you can find those reports at our special website called bcleadership.reports.ca. And please, if you feel led to, donate what you can there to help coverage our BC political reporting. Now, this report is quite timely. It is a report with who I'm calling the Fab Five. Those are, well, 3 of the 5 MLAs who have been smeared as pro-Trump for voting against a motion to condemn Trump's tariffs. Now, you'll see from this interview, it's never as simple as it seems.
I actually think it's a real strength as a party. No other political party does this. We have free votes. It is okay to have differences. It's okay to have people that stand up and vote on their conscience and based on their riding. And so I like it, the fact that we have those differences. Now,
Drea Humphrey again here with Rebel News. Now, before I get to the 3 of the 5 MLAs, I'll let you know who they are, the ones that went on record to say no to the NDP's motion to condemn the tariffs. They had MLA Dallas Brody, Heather Moss, Jordan Keeley, Tara Armstrong, and Brent Chapman. And so I did my best to catch up with who I could of the Fab Five bunch to get their side of the story. Because if you listen to the legacy media, they will tell you that it exposed a rift within the party, that these 5 voted against the majority of their caucus members that showed up to do the vote. Now, it's clear that leader of the Conservative Party of BC, John Rustad, has gone on record saying that he thinks we need to work with Trump instead of this retaliatory approach. Well, now we've already faced it. We're in the midst of an economic war, and we're going to have to see what goes on with these tariffs going back and forth.
Now I want to speak directly to one specific American, Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see.
But I wanted to catch up with the MLAs at the AGM to get their side of the story. Because if you look at the legacy media, they're being called pro-Trump. They're being accused of have fallen for some sort of political trap by saying no and voting with their conscience. And John Rustad is being accused of not being able to manage or run his party with the rift within. Now, I want to say that this motion reminds me a little bit about the NDP motion that came forward quite some time. I think it was like 1 or 2 years after the Freedom Convoy, and they wanted everybody in the House to go ahead and vote against the support of the Freedom Convoy and in favor of vaccine mandates. And of course, it was actually only John Rustad at the time, who wasn't with the Conservative Party, who actually voted against that. So now you have 5 MLAs going against the grain. Here's my interview with them about why they did so.
I actually think it's a real strength as a party. No other political party does this. We have free votes. It is okay to have differences. It's okay to have people that stand up and vote on their conscience and based on their riding. And so I like it, the fact that we have those differences. Now, not on every vote. Obviously, there are things that we want to be able to move forward and get done, as when we had the no confidence vote on Thursday, where we had all 44 of us voting to bring down the NDP. That was our promise, to bring them down as quickly as possible, and we all voted that way. But on other votes, you know, it's important to make sure that people have their individual voices. Unlike the NDP,
All right, this is MLA Jordan Keeley from Peace River North. Now, you're one of the Fab Five, as I'm calling them. Why was it important for you to say no to that motion?
I voted no to that motion. One of the main things is that in our party we have the freedom of vote, and this was one of those items when I thought about the damage of, with the question that was put forward, or the motion put forward by the NDP, it really was a double-edged sword. No matter what, they were going to try and label us, and in that motion, they wanted us to propose putting more tariffs in place, and right now, the tariffs are the last thing that we want. They make our cost of living more expensive, and we should be looking at what will be the best for our people that we represent in British Columbians.
We have Surrey South MLA Brent Chapman, one of the Fab Five, as I'm calling it. Oh my gosh, the headlines this time. But let's talk about your side of the story to why you said no to that motion.
I think it was pretty straightforward in the sense that the initial part of the motion was that we were going to condemn the tariffs of President Trump, and I think that was a bit of a no-brainer. Nobody's in favor of tariffs, punitive tariffs at that. But the second part really was the key to me, and I thought that it was very dangerous for the people of British Columbia for us to enunciate through a motion, quite officially, that we were going to target red states and we were going to go after them. And that was part of the Team Canada strategy.
All right, Chilliwack North MLA Heather Moss here. Why was it important to vote no to that motion?
Well, the most important part to me was doing what I knew my constituents would have wanted me to do. And, you know, I've never shied away when I was on the board from doing what I knew the people wanted me to do, and so that's where I needed to go for this one as well.
For example, what's going on in in Richmond right now with bringing in this low barrier housing, which brings drugs and crime into a community. The community members push back. The local government has voted against it, and yet their MLA in Richmond has been muzzled, not allowed to speak on the issue. I don't think that's right. I think that MLAs are elected to take a stance, and it's okay if that stance might be different from what the party or the leader's position is.
And right now, getting into a tariff war could possibly lead us into a recession, could make myself as a farmer have to sell my farm because I can't even afford to operate and provide food for people. That was one of the first things that I thought about, and I think when it comes to the world leaders, diplomacy should be our ultimate goal. So when it comes to the negotiations between our Prime Minister and the President of the United States, that diplomacy has to be pushed as hard as possible to make it so then we don't have to look at going into a recession or paying higher prices on tariffs, because it's just a ripple effect that we've got record high debts across the province as well as across Canada, and that's just something I couldn't support.
I'm not sure why you'd want to invite that kind of, politicizing something so much that we could end up getting a reaction from the president. We don't really know, how he operates, and if he sees that and says, "Oh, well, you took the time to make this official," well, then I'll make it official against British Columbia, and we really have enough problems already. The other side of it is, if it is a good idea, keep your cards close to your vest. Play it right, play it straight, and wait for them to make their move, and then you make your move and see how it goes. But to start rattling the cage outwardly like that, I just didn't think it was very smart politically for us to do that, and puts us in a lot of trouble. And we're in a lot of trouble with the NDP as it is.
And I knew I was supported by my party. I knew John was absolutely fine with this. So,
well, on that note, the narrative going around is that the five of you voting in that way exposes some sort of rift within the party, or that perhaps Rustad's leadership is faulty when things like this happen. What do you make of that?
well, I would say that the five of us showed confidence in John. And this is what leadership looks like. This is a leader giving us the ability to have a free vote and to not go along to get along. And wow, what a novelty. And so the NDP couldn't really understand it. They thought that we were all falling apart, but we were really not. We were all supporting each other. So it was awesome.
It was interesting that I know a lot of my constituents fully support me, but the attack campaign that the NDP launched afterwards, that's cruel. The way that they tried to make it sound like I was treasonous and that I didn't represent our country, it actually hurt because my father was a vet, my grandfather was a vet. The reason that I'm doing this role is to represent our province and my constituency.
Look at the people in our party, each one of them that we spoke out that day spoke out against the motion, but voted for it, and I understood why. They have they're very deeply concerned about these tariffs, and felt that they wanted to make sure their view was heard on the tariff. So I don't blame them for that. But we have a party that allows to vote what our conscience says, and I made a case for it, and I think that I made a good case for it. So I would stand by that. I mean, if everything we do is going to be some crafty trap by David Eby, we're going to be in a lot of trouble here voting.
Well, sure, that's what the NDP was hoping for. They thought that, they would expose us all as Trump lovers or MAGA people, right? But really, what we were saying was, actually, I felt like it was more of a trap for the whole of the province, because we know that Donald Trump could be vindictive, and he could say 20% for Canada, but let's go 50% for BC. We don't know. And so I think it was very unwise of David Eby to put that motion forward. And I mean, if it had just been we opposed the Trump tariffs, we would have said, sure, of course we opposed the tariffs. But the way it was structured, there was no way.
Now, one of the other things that they're saying about you and the Fab Five is that you guys walked into a political trap. You fell for the NDP's plans. What do you make of that?
We knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into. It was one of those things where we contemplated and talked to John about, and that he said it's our choice. That it's one of those things where the outcome was it wasn't critical, where we really needed to make sure that we had to be aligned as a party. And I felt like it having that freedom of expression is important on certain things, and this was one of those ones where we could show that our party has different opinions, and it's amazing with our party that there's no other party like us. The diversity that we have and the experience that we have, that it's to be able to get into possibly become the Minister of Agriculture, and I actually have a cattle farm. To have that experience, to be able to go forward and help the farmers and know what I'm doing, I think that's one of the things that we have some major experience behind all of our MLAs that I really think we're going to rock it pretty good when we do get into government, and we're waiting.
If you have a party where everybody votes the same way every time, I mean, that runs the risk of saying they're all just sheep. So that they don't really represent their ridings. They don't represent a different thought. And I mean, really, it is just a different way of looking at it.
If you want to check out more of my coverage from the BC Conservative, go to our special website called bcleadershipreports.ca. And if you'd like to support the BC Bureau reports that I bring you, please donate while you're there.